This is the Reverend Dr. Gilberto Rosado. Dios lo bendiga. Este es Reverendo Dr. Gilberto Rosado. Welcoming you to another broadcast. At this hour, we have our bilingual broadcast, our teaching in English and Spanish. So we ask that you be patient as we translate live on the fly between languages. Esta es la hora que damos la enseñanza en inglés y español y pedimos que tengas pues paciencia mientras que traduzcamos de un idioma al otro. Aproveche y aprende el otro idioma. While we're at it, you can learn the other language as well. Es un beneficio de sintonizarse con nuestro ministerio. It's a benefit, an added benefit I should add, of tuning in to our ministry. God bless you all and welcome to our class today, our presentation today. It's going to be an interesting one. We're winding down for this year, our broadcast schedule. Next week, I believe. Let me make another check on that. Next week is our last presentation, our last teaching for the year. Okay, so as usual, we're having technical issues with the bandwidth. It's to be expected. We're broadcasting all over the world in different areas, so it's the bandwidth is again, and we're out in the middle of the boondocks, as they say, out in the boondocks. We're lucky to even be on, so we'll have to go with it. Again, all these teachings are recorded, so if you have technical issues, know that the recordings do not have it. So the recordings will be available if someone wants them in their entirety. They can request it. If the YouTube version is very bad, I will just bring my attention to it, and I will upload the recorded version, which has no issues. Other than that, sit back and enjoy today's presentation. Again, I always go through the preamble, which is why am I using AI in the first place? And my answer to that is, why not? I have nothing to fear from AI, as other churches, creeds may have, with due reason. So I have nothing to fear from AI. I have nothing to fear from science. We've been teaching on these things for quite some time. The issue is that why would a person of the cloth be not afraid of science or of any of these or AI? Because simply the truth has nothing to fear from anything or everything else. When you have the truth, it's not that you ignore everything, because what are you ignoring? So people with the truth do not and should not need to ignore anything. The science. Why? Because God created the heavens and the earth. I mean, if you're a religious person, you go to church, you believe in God, don't you believe that God created the heavens and the earth? That's science. You be afraid of AI, because AI just collects things that it sees online of the AI so that you get credible information. And usually I think Copilot, that I noticed, Copilot shows you the references it used to develop the answer that it gave, right? So again, that being what it is, why should a person of my caliber be afraid of it? It's exactly what we need. So we have nothing to fear. Now, and up to now, we've been using AI. I've been doing searches online even before AI came out. And again, nothing to fear, because there's really, when you have the truth of God, nothing out there really goes against the truth. The truth has nothing to fear from these things. It is only confirmed, it's affirming. God created the heavens and the earth. Therefore, everything in science, that is science. I'm talking about facts, not hypotheses, but facts. The facts of science are not against the Bible or against God. Simply, it's maybe against an interpretation. Could be against a particular church's viewpoint. But it's not against God. God created the heavens and the earth. So he created it. Even the Bible says he created it through his word, by his word. So then there can be nothing in science that goes against God. What people think that is against God is not what the Bible is actually teaching, and it's not the truth of God. It's simple as that. Now, how much of that destroys your religion, that's a different matter. Okay? This is, it's hilarious how people, defending their belief set, because we understand that you're defending your belief set at the cost of throwing God out with the bathwater. I mean, we can't put any advertisements. It's not mine, but okay. So you're throwing God out bathwater. It's what's happening. So what do you rather have? Your religious beliefs, or you rather have the truth of God? You have to decide. That I rather have the truth of God, and that is where my basis is. Okay, so again, we're having difficulties in connectivity today, as we've been having for quite some time in these series. Thankfully, we're winding down. And if the YouTube version is very choppy or whatnot, then I'll upload the the recording that I'm making right now, and that'll be replaced. Okay, so that's good. Let's go right in, because I don't want to get into too much verbiage, too much talking, without getting into the AI. So let me load up my my stream control panel. One moment. And let's load up the particular resources that I always use during a any broadcast. Not that I use them throughout, but you've seen them throughout my broadcasts. That I have made use of different material here and there at certain times. So let this go through. Alrighty. Setting things up on the screen. Let me just go to the screen here so you guys can be entertained while I do this prep work. This is the AI we'll be using today. It's the Microsoft AI Copilot, it's called. Here's our Bible references here and there. that we use from time and time. We won't be drawing anything today, so I'm just gonna X out of that. And what else? YouTube should be behind here someplace. And on YouTube, you can find us on TSPCI. TSPCI, do a search on YouTube for us, and you will find us there. And subscribe and follow. A lot of interesting topics that we're covering. And I'm also known as the killer of atheism. Yes, I know you're still an atheist, but that's not what I mean, and not what is meant by the killer of atheism. It's simply that atheism, as you guys have pretended, can no longer be maintained. I have redefined things, which I can do at my level, and correct things, really, is what basically I've done. And that is to realign the conversation with the dictionary. Is that so outrageous? So I've realigned the debate according to the Webster Dictionary. That's it, not according to the Bible, according to the dictionary. And it's amazing how most of the atheists are, they don't know how to handle that. Simply, and today we're going to talk about something else they couldn't handle either. But we're going to let the AI handle it, because the AI doesn't have something to protect. Okay. So anyway, it's a denial. And most of the atheists that we've encountered, they're in denial. They come to a point where they just have to be in denial. That's it. And unfortunately, and we did this in the previous teaching that we showed. I mean, I did a debate with an atheist just a few weeks ago, and the denial was so evident. The denial that was portrayed. That's it. And then if there were any other atheists that, come on, be honest. Be honest. You can tell when someone's in denial, can't you? So when you see one of your own be in denial, then why, admit to it. He was in denial, and that was that. And most of you get to a point where you got to go into denial. Because what's happening is not that someone is proving that there is God or that God exists, which we already covered that. The issue is that you're denying intelligent reasoning. You come to a point where you have to deny your own science. You deny intelligent reasoning. And that's where the denial comes into. You don't want to entertain that thought. Oh, we can't go to that hypothesis. It's just simply denying what is, in terms of acceptable conceptual validity, science. It is part of knowledge. It's part of reasoning. But you want to close off the doors to any type of reasoning that leads to a certain acceptance. Not that there is a God, not that, no, but simply the space for their being. You simply want to close off the possibility that maybe there is a God. We don't know, we can't prove it. But the the concept is valid. It's a possible outcome. It's a possible, truth. We just cannot confirm it, but it is possible. The atheist doesn't want to go there. Okay, I guess they were formerly addicted. Right. So that's basically what it is. AI though doesn't have that problem. AI doesn't have that issue. AI just calls it pretty good because, for bias and for bias epistemology, we can do that ourselves on both sides. But AI doesn't have to do that, doesn't need to. It just brings out what's there, the facts, if you will. This is what's there. That's what these guys say. That's what those guys say. And if you ask the right questions, like how would science best treat this idea or this concept? It'll just tell you based on the data of how to handle science and the scientific method, and it'll give you different examples. And then you have other fields of science like philosophy. How would that be handled? What's the appropriate, intelligent way to handle this? That's all. I've been living this way. I've been handling my faith this way since I was 8 years old. Look at me. Okay? Since 8 years old, I've been looking at things with the scientific method. Science is my favorite subject in school. It is my number one, outside of the scriptures, outside of my relationship with God. It is the number one affinity of mine. And then, of course, there's, Baroque music. So anyone who, I'm in your town if you hear a car passing by and you got Bach playing a full blast, baby. That's most likely me. Hey, remember me with the big blue bus in New York City? Remember? I'm the guy. All right, listen, this is the truth around my persona. That's who I am. That's who I am, right? So, and that's the facts. So again, I've never ever, in all of my years, because that's one early lesson that I learned, was not to be afraid of the wind blowing. The truth is the rock. It's a bedrock. And every opinion and interpretation and church creed and ideas of men and all of those things are wind. They're wind. Wind here, wind there, in different directions. That the truth is the bedrock. It has nothing to worry about the wind. The wind can blow this one, that one, whatever. Let it blow. Let it blow upon my understanding. Because the truth is the rock. That's not going anywhere. It can't be affected or changed. Its appearance can be affected because the bedrock could have been covered with leaves and debris and soil and whatnot. But once the wind starts blowing, all of that stuff blows away. Dogmas of men, ideas of men, my own ideas, my own opinions gets blown away by these different winds. And what is left? The truth. And that's how I've come to the truth. By not being afraid of dealing with science and AI and what that one says, what that one says, what that one says, what this one says. Let it all blow away my own misconceptions. And I've done that since 8 years of age. Of course, I've had another helper, which is not a human helper, but we don't want to disturb your sensitivities right now. It's too early in the game, right? But the rock of truth is firm. We don't have to be afraid of that. But you do, honestly, though, as a church leader, you have to be careful. If you're not a person of understanding, and what does that mean? It means that you know. And what does that mean? It means that you know your science, you know your mathematics, You're a person that reasons well, not in your own opinion, but in the opinion of others, and even the AI you have seen in this series that has said that I reason fantastically well, superbly. Okay, so we have others who opine, who are expert, that have confirmed of where I stand. The question is, where do you stand? Honestly, you have to be honest with yourself and not just be an apologist for your particular belief set. As I wrote in my book, Salvation Checkup, belief is the subheading. Belief is not enough. And I already gave last week, I believe, because I give the story about the Muslim in the Delhi. I've given that story a couple of times. So you can see that and hear that in my other ramblings. But, the issue here is, or do you actually know what the truth is? Do you have truth? And I will suggest that if you are not at the level of a Moses, a Jacob, a person, the prophets, the true prophets of God in the Scripture, if you're not there at the level where you are receiving direct instruction from the God of the Bible, then you're not there. You're going to church, you're doing your religious thing, but you're just as good as anyone following their false religion. And it is the main reason that we have so many false religions out there. Because you have no real thing. You have nothing that's different than you're in you think that you are in the truth. Just like the other guy thinks that they're in the truth. Why should they jump from their fantasy into yours? This is why there's no motivation and no reason for these other churches to empty out and yours to fill. And basically you have churches that are filled with the amount, or by the amount of entertainment and activities, that sort of thing. And many Christians and many church-going people, you have to admit that the reason you chose your church was because they have this program, this or that, and you like this, or you like the music, or the pastor sounds great, or he's a personal guy, personalities are out there, but very few of you are making or stepping out or making movements directed true as true can get for many of you. So, that being what it is, we'll move on to what we're handling today. And you're just, you recognize, if you're hearing this, God wants you to hear this. This is number one. Because it's time for you to grow up. In other words, God wants you to move forward. Okay, fine, you had your kiddie kindergarten church. You sang, you did this activity here, activity there, friends here, friends there, the soul for His work. Granted, people who are not going to do the will of God don't need to do that. You can go and continue to go to your daycare. It's, but those that God is intending on using for His glory in the kingdom to a great degree, it's time for you to move up. You're going to have to make the move up. And so, but again, is it to go to theology school? Is that the move up? Or is the move up to go to God's school with God as the professor, your professor? See, because that's what I had when I was 8 years old. That's when I was ready for it. Because again, I had a scientific methodology mindset from the get-go, from the beginning. Okay? But you guys took a little longer to get to the point where you're at now, watching this presentation. God is inviting you to move up. And that is a direct, personal, interactive relationship with the God of the Bible. Were you able to check off all the checks? Because you need to move up to where all those checks are checked off. And that's basically what the invitation is to you, that God is making to you. All right, so the topic today, let's go into the topic today. The topic today is for AI to answer a question that atheists were unable to answer. And we're going to pose this question to the AI. And we're going to see how AI handles it. Okay, and again, for the last time, hopefully today, I'll remind you all that if there's any interruption in the video, hold on and see if because the studio will reconnect automatically. But it happened when the YouTube, I'm not going by any other platform here, but YouTube, if YouTube disconnects or the video is starting this, so this I will re-upload it and post it there on the YouTube channel, TSPCI. Okay, and so that is something for you to link back into Facebook and on X and on whatever else I do it on. Also, those of you who are waiting to provide your offerings and support for the ministry, this is your QR code. Just put your camera. Where's my camera? You put your phone, take your phone, and you point it to this here. You take it like if you're going to take a picture, and it should have, at least Android, I don't know about Apple, but Android recognizes, oh, look, it's a QR code. I'm supposed to go there, and it'll know what to do, okay? If you have an Apple, I don't know. I don't use Apple, but, hopefully they have that technology at least, right? All right, yes, the never-ending battle. Okay, so let's go into the AI. Come to the screen with me, boys and girls. Again, we're using Microsoft Copilot. Is there any reason that I'm using Copilot? It's just something that is available to me here. I use it most often than other AIs, and I haven't made an assessment between the AIs. I could use Grok. I'm not going to use Chat GPT at all, but I use the Copilot, Grok, and that's pretty much. I'm trying to think of the other one, but these are the two pretty much that I use, and again, that anyone else can use. In matter of fact, so that's the other reason for doing this. I'm doing it in a way through platforms that anyone can access. And I'm also teaching you how to ask the questions, because the questions have to be, again, you have to have knowledge of what you're doing and where you're going. Some knowledge, enough to make sure that the AI isn't taking you someplace that is not telling you and not answering your question directly, right? Or, in fact, it is answering your question directly. You just asked the wrong way. You asked the wrong question. You think it sounds right to you, but is actually literally not correct for your intended purpose. So again, you have to have knowledge. You have to be smart enough, and put in simple language, to ask the right question. Because most people who are not educated, they ask questions or they speak in a manner which is confusing, especially for AI. AI is very literal, very direct. and you're talking like street talk, it's not going to, AI is just not going to give you some workable math with that. Okay, so let's go. So the question, now you will see how I frame the question. So, and the question is, it's a repeat. I was going to go into my old post. That post has about 3 years on it, so I'm not going to waste time looking for it. I'll just rephrase it. Okay. Let's examine a scenario. I was going to see if I'm a human being, of course. We'll go through this. This just interrupts. Now, if I wasn't a human, this would have interrupted the entry, right? That's all it needs to do. Because in terms of software and robots and what trying to do this, it interrupted their flow. So that's it. That's enough to stop it, right? So you don't have to, how else are you verifying you're human? That you continue after that, right? So that's it. Let's examine a scenario that a creator, and I'm using this, a creator author. I'll do the slash, right? Creator author. That a creator author writes a book full of stories, lives, histories, and book. Well, the stories inside became self-aware. Okay, you got that? Yeah, you get that? So what the question is, if the book that someone writes could ever or become itself self-aware, not the book in terms of like the outside cover. I'm talking about the book in terms of its content. Okay? The book in terms of its content. Like you've read a book and, it talks about whatever character and his life, things happening. But if that became self-aware, so wait a minute, I'm here and the dog is walking and we're going down the road. It became self-aware and says, I'm alive, we're doing this is the day in my life. And so it became self-aware. That's what self-aware means. Okay? So you know where I'm going with this, right? Can you think? Extrapolate. Who and so yes, let's ask this question. This is an abbreviated version of the question I posed to atheists. Okay, and what happened before we actually put in the prompt? What happened? What actually happened? How did the atheists respond? They all fell over themselves. They all fell over. And I'm sure, and you see, and the problem is that other atheists, how do you guys handle the more intelligent atheists out there? How do you deal with all these dummies that call themselves atheists? Isn't that embarrassing to you? They didn't deal with this. Now, there's a possibility that they didn't want to. Right? That's possible. I'll give you that. They said, they figured, oh, this is a trap. Why would this be a trap? See? But whenever you have that, and I want to address that, because a lot of religious people also feel the same about like this other religion, someone asking them a certain question and they feel, oh, that's a trap, that's a trick question. Why do you feel that way? Because they're afraid. You're afraid of getting trapped. Well, then that means that you don't have the truth. See? And should you be afraid? Are you afraid of having to lose a certain belief in light of a truth that someone told you? I mean, if it's the truth, why are you afraid of letting go of a belief that is therefore false? This is the thing people need to get an understanding of. Jesus said, to those of you who believe in Jesus, that you shall know the truth, and the truth shall set you free. So what are you afraid of? I was never afraid. Okay? We're talking about being afraid. Right? Am I an atheist today? No. But if you if you just have religion, then you need to be afraid. Because you are supporting a belief, not the truth. That's where the difference comes in. That's how you know the difference. But if you're standing on truth, bring me all the signs. Bring in all the Jehovah's Witnesses, all the Adventists, all this, all that, whatever they want to bring. Mormon this, and the truth is the truth. There is nothing to fear. Okay, so can each of those that I mentioned and the many, many, many more that I didn't, can they say the same thing? Excuse me. Break time. Sorry about that. I'll put it on pause next time, but the broadcast, I can't pause the broadcast. All right, it's the nose. See, that's it. It's not I don't have a cold, but it's just the nose running more than it usually does. Okay, we're still having connection issues, so let's hopefully it clears out. By the way, if you want to chat, ask a question, where your chats available are on Facebook, on YouTube, TSPCI, at Twitch with Paybox, 5 platforms that you can engage in chat with me in case you're looking to ask a question or participate otherwise. So let's go on again. Okay, so let's go into the screen. And let me try to get this better one here. No. Let me try to get this more expanded for you. And I'll readjust it as we go along. Just give me a moment here. Let me just show you that where we're at. The inside became self-aware. Would it know who its creator is? Okay, so that. were not prepared beforehand. Okay, so understand that. Update that. So here's the answer. Fascinating thought experiment, it says on top. I don't know if you can see that. You can't see that, but above the layers of the scenario, it says fascinating thought experiment. Let's unpack it step by step. Layers of the scenario. The book as object. A book is normally just ink and paper. See how it tells you you're self-aware? We're granting it consciousness, which is good. Okay, that's fair. Let's grant it consciousness. Self-awareness. To be self-aware, the book would need not only awareness of its own existence, but also the ability to reflect on its origins. That's also fair. Okay? And then knowledge of the Creator. Whether it knows its author depends on what information is encoded within it and what kind of cognition we imagine it has. So that's a good issue. Now, the knowledge of the Creator, whether it knows its author, depends on what information is encoded within it. So information that is in some way. So notice, though, what is missing. Did you notice what's missing here? See, this is the problem that atheists have. Not that theists don't have it, but atheists who pose the question obviously demonstrably show this lacking. And the lacking is that you're not able to think about abstract ideas. You're not able to handle what ifs well. Okay, and that's essential even for scientific, scientific study and hypothesize. It's essential. But I find that most atheists, when dealing with atheists, they don't have that ability, or they just excise it from them because, again, that having that ability then tends to be akin to accepting conceptual validity or concepts. It's what's happening. So what information, and it's interesting that in the Bible God says that let us make man, or to answer the question, are there things that God created that, details of, the Bible says it in the first chapter. It says, let us make man in our own image and likeness. So the answer is yes, there is, according to the Bible, encoded information about who or what the Creator is. That fascinates even the Mormon, right? The possibilities here. So let's go into this more. So possible outcomes. Possible outcomes include, yes, it knows. If the author's identity is written in the book, that is on the cover, in the preface, or embedded in the stories, the self-aware book could infer who created it. Now, the answer for you atheists, is that happening in the world today or throughout history? Has man inferred that there is a God? Now, it might even interpret the author as kind of a godlike figure, since its entire reality, the stories, characters, histories, was authored. Is that something that we see in the history of mankind? Now, the other possibility is that no, it doesn't know. If the book only contains the stories themselves without explicit mention of the author, the book's awareness would be limited to its internal world, right? And that is absolutely correct. In all the things of people that we're talking about, atheists, believers of different religions, this religion, that religion, whatnot, which ones are the ones that are limited to the internal world? See? Right? Now, the scenario is still viable. This doesn't say that the scenario isn't working or ongoing. It is active. This is an active scenario. Simply that a possible outcome is that the characters in the stories will not have is limited to the internal world. In other words, is limited to the internal world. In other words, to the reality that is the book itself, with the story, folks. That's why I said, you guys, if you're a responsible Christian, you're doing God's will, you should be sharing this video all over the place, plastering. Not that I look for attention, because I can rate software and split this thing all around. But the thing is that if you are a child of God, if you believe that you're in the truth, this thing should be spread far and wide. Come on. But again, it doesn't promote your thing, does it? These are the things that I look at. I see that. I see what's up. Nobody's fooling me on this. I see what's up. The question is, the issue is that you don't see it. All right. So again, when you have a limited scope, which the AI in other videos, you have to see the whole AI series. See the whole AI series and you'll notice something. And you'll see what's happening. If people have a limited scope, then that's all they're going to see. And the AI already told us on previous searches that we've done for other topics in this space, it has already said that thinking outside the box is the most intelligent thing, not being limited in your scope. So basically what the AI is referring to here is the possibility that these characters can also take a stance of ignorance, or a stance of limited reasoning, and just limit themselves to what they see and touch, and that's it. They're limited to their reality. Because this is what happens. The idea here of a creation presents the idea of a book, because a book is created. But it also encapsulates the idea that inside the book there's a different reality. There is a reality and existential state that is separate from the outside world, in terms of us when we look at a book. And the scenario that God presents in the Bible, that the Bible's presenting, is exactly that. So that creates stuff that science itself identifies as epistemological bias, which is where most of the atheists are residing, because they will choose only science, but only the science, mind you, that limits their purview of thinking outside of the box, which then limits science totally. It's counterproductive and counterintuitive to the scientific research and discovery. But that's the happy place for the atheists. So let's continue. The characters inside might speculate about their origins, but without external reference, they have no way to confirm the existence of a creator. Isn't that what is going on now? Even the theists have no evidence. They can't confirm the existence of God. Right? And the reason for this, and this is another question I'll pose to the AI. See, the AI does the same assumption that most people are making. Do you know what is the common assumption that is in error? That the AI is also making within this construct, within what its examination here. If you didn't, and what you're not seeing there is the assumption that everything exists. Everything has to exist in order to be. But the Bible does not agree with that statement. Amazing. And even to Christians and to theists, people who believe in the Bible, that will come as a surprise. The Bible sets understanding. And it's the biggest mistake that most religious people make, understanding on the Bible. So that the Bible defines what life is and what is the truth. Some atheists will say, well, that's dangerous. You can't go by that. But again, you're basing that comment on the things you've seen churches or the religious communities do throughout history, is it on. Okay? Again, the issue here that the AI is, because remember, the only thing in existence within the knowledge of the book. See? Now this is where the brain starts to boil the water here, right? What's in the book? Not anything outside, because there's it's just simply the limit to the universe or the multiverses in the book is the book itself. There is. This is all that we see. They're not wrong. They're author to this book. Encapsulated reality and existence. That's all it means. Because again, if you're thinking within concepts, what is the valid concept? That if reality and existence is its own encapsulation, will be able to say and have proof of and evidence of. The author, where is the author? Christians try, and I say Christian because I usually mostly, see and view Christian material, Christian world. And so, most Christians that I see online debating this issue, they're trying to prove that God exists. That's like trying to prove the author of the book is in the book. Now, unless the book itself includes a character, but it's a character that is akin to the author, but that character wouldn't be the author, would it? No, it would be a representation, but not the author himself or herself, for that matter. And then there would be other characters that says, no, I see you. You're human. You're not God. We have religions like my own that have God as a person, as a man who came down. Whatever ideas you got, okay. In either case, God came in the flesh as a character in the book. You still have other characters in the book because we're all self-aware. And say that can't be God because God is nothing. Now that, yes, God did make himself in the book. He wrote himself in the book. You see that? He wrote himself in the book. But then you have many his children, saying that can't be God because God's not a man. Does it? You understand? Did it take away from the fact that God wrote himself in the book? The author wrote himself in the book? Do you see the problems here? Assumptions, and even using the Bible incorrectly, because you're using the verses that say, well, God is not a man to lie. You know, when you have to understand language. Right? Yes, God is not a man for any purpose. It's not saying that. But it is saying that God does not lie like men do, because that's what it's saying there. Men lie. They have a need to lie. Right? It's like other people, what I said in the period, facts. So I'm not a person to be ignoring truth and facts. I don't have to, because I'm not a false believer. I'm not a false worshiper. I don't need to do that. I don't need to defend my church. I go like what Jesus said, and you shall know the truth, and the truth. So that's what we're defending here. But again, what happens in that scenario? In that scenario, there's people who will be against this character. You can't be God. Well, you say that you're God. You see? Again, this takes people that have understanding. You have to have understanding. I can't give you, years worth of education that you did not, give yourself when you were a child. I deal with children who for themselves a fair shot at education. This education is free. There's a lot of education now, and then later, you know what I don't like about it? Is that later, if not even already, they think they know it all. And then they come and they want to tell me what the Bible says. Really? Go back to your video games. You have to be kidding. It's astonishing, really, the level of ignorance that arises in society these days, as if it didn't do that before. But the issue here is that this is the danger you guys get into and that you're in. It's not based on truth. It's just based on what you've accepted, what you've been persuaded of, but you're not willing to deal with the truth. You want to protect your whatever truth you have. You may have some, but it's all covered with gook and dead leaves and debris, and you don't want the winds. You're building a shed to protect your piece of truth, and you're building a shed, and all you're doing is protect and cover the truth. You don't even see it any longer, because what you see is all of these leaves and this debris that you are mistaking for the truth. I know the truth. The truth is there. I know it. But what you're seeing and what you're protecting is not that truth, which you will soon come to realize if you would allow the wind. There's one major wind. That's a tornado, man. Let it blow. And you shall know the truth. And the truth shall set you free. Okay? If you're watching this video, trying to watch it, all right, so we've seen that these things, as we get better on the stream, remember that an uninterrupted version will most likely become available on YouTube before we lose the connection again. Okay. I don't see why the enemy tries to interfere with this. It's ridiculous. Because simply, I have the recording. Hello, ding dong, dummy. Because, he's a silly dog, this one. Okay. So let's continue here. Now, so the characters inside might speculate about their origins, but without external through even the interdoctrinal disagreements there are amongst religious groups, right? As we were hinting at. It revolves around the person of Christ, who he is, the deity, the divinity of Christ and whatnot. This all is involved here. The difficulties, because people are not understanding the ramifications that God is the creator, and if God would represents himself, what problems may arise from it. The curious thing, though, however, and you got to think about this as well, is that how else would Christ have been sacrificed? If you have to understand the mission of Jesus, of the Christ, was to give his blood to pay for the sins of man. What better way to do it? By sending him to his own people who would misinterpret the God is not a man thing, to then have that also to condemn him with. He's saying blasphemy. He's blasphemous. See that? So God had, if God is trying to make have some bloodshed to cover for the sins of man or for Israel, he had to make it so that Israel would do the divinity or not, the truthfulness to his divinity or not. It has nothing to do with Christianity. What happened to the guy called Jesus Christ? And it's just a simple thing. Was Jesus Christ in the high place in Jerusalem or outside the city walls? Was his blood shed? These are things that teach in defense of their faith and their beliefs. What does this imply in light of this scenario that we presented here? Because the AI is not trying to defend this religion or support another. It's not. It's just simply showing what issues there are. And it's for us to place ourselves within this and say what issues that I'm having or that my religion has or the other religion has is seen in this treatment, this examination of the issues involved with the Creator creating and the created thing becoming self-aware. And then what? What happens then? And if God creates himself as a character in the book, then what does that cause? And what was then his intention? Because we know it's going to cause conflict. So does all of it fit into the religion's expected treatment? Not what you're expecting as an outcome, but the treatment of things. Does this fall in line with it? And the answer is going to be yes. If you're a Jew, you're going to have to honestly say, yes, it does. That makes perfect sense to put in a sacrificial lamb, because that's what Israel's all about, isn't it? And what would make Israel cause this lamb to be sacrificed? And all the while, if it was God himself interjecting, does that fit into a purpose or into the character of God to actually be among his people, to walk among his people, to speak directly to the people? Is that something that God would want to be doing? I don't think any Jew can deny, any rabbi. The rabbi wants to come to me and we can have a discussion, even online, Zoom it. Wonderful. I doubt that will happen. But we all know why, right? And they won't debate me on this. Why? Because you read Exodus 20, you can't. That's why. You see? Anyone know that? Rabbi, you know that. Exodus 20, done, finished. There's no debate here of what God would want to do. There cannot be a debate with this. Okay, anyway, we don't need to prove ourselves here. The evidence is evident. Now, how about this one? Partial, number 3, partial or mythic knowledge. We got that in the screen. The book might sense patterns or laws in its stories, like recurring themes, stylistic fingerprints, and infer the existence of a guiding hand, which is also something that's being had. I'd like to discuss at this moment, there's some great creators, YouTube creators out there in this space who exalt formulations, I'm going to say, but formulas, probability analysis, and philosophies to prove that the probability that God exists is great. It is probable, and because it's so greatly probable, then it's good enough to believe it. It's basically where they're falling, give or take whatever view or variation to that end. It's basically what they're saying. They really do their homework. And I want to take a moment to applaud them in the work that they're doing. It's really wonderful work that they actually... but let me... I see a little problem here. I want to see. That should be working. I don't know why it is. Okay, anyway, but it should be... it's very fascinating that they actually do this. And I'm looking at it, and I say... again, because of the concept, think of this. If this issue here that I'm presenting, this scenario is in fact the same with God the Creator and the created things, the reality in existence, then think about what it is that you're doing, my Christian brother and our brethren, I should say. There's ladies who are doing this too, at least capable of it. And so what are you doing? Do you see that what the probabilities? Aren't you looking at whatever God made in terms of the mathematics, and the proposition that everything is the image and likeness of God, the universe itself, so that the math you're using is itself the image and likeness of God. Wouldn't the probabilities, the numbers work themselves out to conclude God without there being any evidence? I've seen people working with the probabilities that God is. So those are the ones working inside the box. Then there's others that have a mind to expand outside of the box, but then they're just expanding into the space. The abstract zone, if you will. It's a mental zone outside of reality and existence. And so they philosophize on that and show that there is validity in thinking that there's a zone above it all. They're not saying that there's a being. They say it could be, but they rather look at the space. In other words, all they're looking at is it possible that outside of existence and reality there is and is outside of it. So again, they go to the philosophy or the examination of is there possible space outside. So they go there without saying, that, or concluding, because there's no evidence inside the space. See, that's the hilariousness of it. I would like to pose a question to those folks. What is the structure for evidence outside of the space? Yeah. So what basis of science would you have outside of existence and reality? Because if you're already going there through your philosophies, so then what would be in that space? Right? I don't think they're there yet. Because so at this point, it's only like nothing that they can add to that. And so that's fair. At least they have the discipline to stay within those bounds. So let's continue. These are just questions. This is the AI is posing. It's not posing. I posed the question, but the AI is proving what's out there, because basically that's what we see in the community. What we see in this debate space is this reality that we have people on all sides and on different levels is what we have. And the AI is proving that that's what's to be expected if my scenario is right. So this is why I'm showing you this exercise. And again, I repeat that this exercise is done on the fly. I did not prepare this. I don't prepare my Sunday lessons at all. I just sit down here and I start. That's it. And with this AI, I just sat here this morning and asked the question as you saw it. I'm just asking the question. I did not try this before. Learn the truth, and the philosophy is nothing, because I know that I have nothing to fear. The only people who fear this type of examination are those who are religious, who don't have a personal, interactive relationship with the God of the Bible. Right, and this is the reality of it. Listen, if the atheist was as truthful as the AI, we would have some interesting discussions in the debate space. Would be fantastically interesting. But because the atheist is in denial, right, and then the theists are lacking in knowledge, because that's also the other reality to this. And remember that the atheists used to be the theists before, right? So these two groups that are basically ignorant of the truth, each other over nonsense. And the AI, it doesn't have any beef in the fight. So it just tells it like it is, which is refreshing. That's what's refreshing. All right. So then also here it says, this is similar to how humans infer the existence of natural laws or even a higher power without direct evidence. So this again is recognizing that within the group. So we had like what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 that already exist in the world have been described already in this examination and handling of this question. You see that? So now we go on. Philosophical parallels. So theological analogy is the first one. Just as humans debate whether we can, let's see, where is that? Okay, yeah. Just as humans debate whether we can truly know our Creator, the book would face the same dilemma. Now, if the book would face the same dilemma, doesn't that mean that it's possible that the situation, the scenario that I gave the AI is the self-same scenario that we actually exist in? Because we see the same issue. The same factors in science would provide the same results. That's scientific methodology. So the true answer for anyone who is going to be truthful and based on science and scientific reasoning would be yes. Exactly how you described it in this scenario. Exactly how you described it in this scenario. Because it would produce, that's all the atheist has to just admit to, that's all. But denial doesn't allow them to. You see that? They're doing the same thing that a religious person would do. They claim not to be religious. You're doing the same thing. You're denying when there's no more room, no more space for you. You start to go, when there's no more room, no more space for you, you start to go into denial, just like a religious person would do. What? Quite a lesson today. Hey. The next one is simulation hypotheses. The next one is simulation hypotheses. If our universe were a story, we might be like the book's characters, aware of our world, but not even simulation, that we live in a simulation. This is akin to it. This is the, if you subscribe to that or not, those who subscribe to that we are in a simulation, basically what the AI is saying is that the book, the creation of a book, is in fact a creation of a simulation. So a creation of a simulation. So the people who talk about simulation, that we're living in a matrix and a simulation, all of that idea, these are ideas that come from the state of being in a similar scenario as the one that I have presented here to the AI. That we are a created reality, a created existence, who is self-aware. And so everything else is exactly on, and the indicators are part of the same indicators if that scenario is true. Now, the nice one here, because I looked ahead, is epistemic limits. Awareness doesn't guarantee knowledge. The book's consciousness would be bounded by what's inside its pages. Right? So that it says epistemic limits. It's curious also, or maybe not so much, why it didn't say epistemic bias. Because epistemic bias is a thing. So just like the limits, this is where most atheists would be at. And that the consciousness that they say we all have should be bounded by what is inside these pages. Okay, so in the scenario that I presented, this is an atheist or a person that says simply we can only know what is inside. And that is it. But again, if there is an outside, then the atheist or anyone who thinks this way is limited in their capacity, right? You are having epistemic bias. But many Christians and many believers of all different faiths, Muslims, etc., all of them, any churchgoer, any religious belief, including atheism, most all of you have this epistemic bias. Because just like the atheist demands evidence and proof, the Christian and the other faiths are trying their darndest to say there is proof that God exists. You see, that is the problem that y'all are having. I don't have that problem. I don't have that issue. Why? Because I think out of the box. And why? What's the main reason? You ask me, well, how did you develop this thinking outside of the box about reality and existence? Because at 8 years old, I developed an interactive personal relationship with the God of the Bible. To put it short and simply, and like the Bible has it, I know that my Redeemer liveth. Period. Simple. Black and white. And that is why I broke free from epistemic bias, from the epistemic limits of being inside the created reality, to realize that He is, and He is outside of the created thing, which happens to be reality and existence. We call it reality and existence. You guys want to say or think, imagine that whatever we call something, that's the way it is all over the universe or outside of the universe, if there was an outside. That's the error that many people are making. Well, how is it that you believe, you come to the thought that just because we put in the dictionary exist, that did it? Everything in this universe, any other universe, or outside has to conform to our definition. This is the stupidity. It is stupid to a great degree. How can we have this idea? Oh, if it doesn't exist, it isn't real. It's not real. You know, it's like, duh. How do people get this stupid? It's just stupidity at its greatest and maximum degree. It's just hilariously stupid. Our words do not define the universe. Since when does our words, because again, where is the God of the Bible? Beyond time and space. So whether you have the wherewithal to think that the word exists applies to the guy who created it in the first place. Where do you get the gall to think that the word real applies to the guy who created reality? This is the madness there is in the debate space. And I can only think that the theologians out there, the apologists of renown, simply like it this way. It makes money. I just have to go down to the bottom common denominator, and that is it fosters a reason for their degree, and their degree equals their income, and it pays the mortgage, and as simple as that. Unfortunately, I don't have those worries. Thank the God of the Bible. But it's the only thing that makes sense. Why would intelligent Christians, I ask, being a Christian, a man of faith of the Christian version, why would somebody, not I, but why would people, other fellow Christians, who are intelligent, be hammering down on this existence issue. And in the case of the probability and analyst out there that I've seen, he's a student. He's what I call a youngin. He's a studious fellow, and I admire him. I admire what he does and how he does it. But he's just climbing up the wrong tree, misguided, because his premise is off. The process is good, though. You know, it's a great exercise. It's wonderful. It falls within the realm of science and even of faith, because you're trying to reason God within the structure of reality and existence. So, but he's under the impression, see, he hasn't made that he hasn't reached that point to realize, well, how come are we applying to God? The word exists does not exist in the Bible. See, why hasn't he come to that understanding? I bet if he hears this, it's the first time he heard it. With all the probability and all of that, I'm not mocking it, but people tend to, go over and do their studies and all this blue, and there's a little thing that they never pick up on because it's outside of their scope. And simply, they're just barking up the wrong tree. Barking up the wrong tree takes as much effort, and in this case, as much of a college degree, as barking up the correct tree. The question is the famous question that was asked that had been posed as a situation. And I forget the name of the movie. It was a hilarious comical movie. One of the funniest things I've ever seen. It wasn't a Monty Python. It was with an actor who had nice blonde hair. He was really with Val Kilmer in his early days. And I forget the name of was it Top Secret or no, not Top Secret. It could have been or something like that. They were looking for something behind enemy lines. They had a parachute. Anyway, the guy has these explosives in a bag or something. I'm not sure if it's explosives. It was mission important. And the guy asked him, "Where's the bag?" And he said, "It's behind. I left it behind that tree over there." That the thing is that it's a forest full of trees. The camera pans out all these trees like you will see in a pine forest. Just an incredible amount of trees there. He said, "It's behind that tree." So again, yeah, there's a tree to climb up, which is the right tree. The question is, are you on the right tree or not? So it's easy to be putting all your degree, all your efforts on climbing up the wrong tree. That's a thing. It's a real possibility. Okay, how about the probability of that in a forest? Do that probability and see how where you end up. You see that? And understand that if God created the heavens and the earth, he's going to put the probabilities in there, but it doesn't prove it. I think the proving of existence and the assumption of existence is exactly that. It's an assumption. It's not what it shows. And when you have a creator God, you have to be careful, especially when he says things like, in terms of your profession or what you're studying, what you're doing, in terms of your research, a probability scientist and whatnot, he says, a reckless thing in that case, let us make man in our image and likeness. That's a really reckless thing, because now we're giving man the likeness and image of God. What would be the probability that there's a God then? You see what I'm saying? And we're not talking yet about the universe, which is my proposal has been for some time now that the God who created the heavens and the earth also created the heavens and the earth in his likeness and image. That man was not just the only one that God made in his likeness and image. And there's reason. Well, somebody will say, well, the Bible doesn't say that. Well, the Bible is about. See, that's why people, Christian folks, Bible people, you guys gotta listen. You gotta grow up a little bit. You have to understand this one little detail. The Bible is not about the heavens and the earth. The Bible is about man and his fall and the reason and purpose and plan of salvation. It's like this. But we can use a brain that he gave us. Now, if he makes man in his likeness and image, the Christian likeness, and we did, or I think it was last week or the week before, when we started the Picture of God sub-series within the AI and Faith, we showed where the AI identifies similarities between man, the image and likeness of God, and space. And so if space has the same characteristics, similarities that the image and likeness of God has in man, then how can we not say or infer that maybe it's possible, you're going to do probabilities here, that that space, that the universe, and this includes universes if they exist, are the image and likeness of God. So that is the issue. Now again, I've already explained that the image and likeness of God would not be dark. Because here you see darkness. God is light. So here we have the same problem that we pointed to before in the book scenario. Remember in the book scenario where if God, the author of the book, wrote himself into the book as a character, what problems would happen, right? Do you remember that earlier in our discussion today? Maybe you got cut off with this interruption that we have all the time here. What was happening with that? And what was happening, we get disconnected every once in a while, that's why I'm stopping and pausing. But the reality of that was that the book, people in the book, characters in the book, would have issues. Say, what, you claiming to be the author? The author is not a man. See? So that would be the problem in that scenario. Same thing we have in this religious debate if Jesus Christ is God or not, and how can God be a man, and all of these things. See, all of these things, they create problems that are created. Well, would Jesus say he can't be God because he said he didn't know? Well, you see, these are the problems that are created when the author puts himself in a book, right? You put yourself in a character. What is the character? And again, it's people that are not thinking, because they forget one thing. God, he says, my God and my Father. But if Jesus Christ is a man, and even if it's God manifested as a man in the flesh, okay? Remember that. Because when it's in the flesh, ding dong, that's the key for you to understand why Jesus said what he said the way he says it. Because the Bible as its God. So, meaning that if it's flesh and blood, God is its God. The God of the Bible. So how can Jesus stand there and not say as man, because he was there in flesh and blood, how can he say things that do not indicate that he is flesh and blood? And that all men, all flesh and blood has God. God is the God of all flesh and blood. That's what it is. So somebody asks him, well, who's your God? He's going to say the Father. Because they're asking the flesh and blood. You have to understand, no one came to Jesus asking, ask God. How many came to him asking him as if he was the Father? Right? So the questions posed were made to the man. And Jesus answered according to man. And that's the simple truth. Simple. It's math. It's science. By reading the final part of this AI examination. And we'll see if we have anything else for today. So the answer depends on how much of the author's identity is embedded in the text. That means in the story itself. If the book's awareness is confined, and in terms of how much does the God of the Bible want to manifest himself? See, that's the other issue. Because an author doesn't need to show himself in the book at all. Not at all. So, assuming that God wants to show himself, and how is that? I didn't hear anything. No, you did. Because if God created a man in his likeness and image, that image is also in space, in the universe, in reality, then that is it. Okay, so he's already put in to the book what he wants, and it's pretty good amount because it's his image and likeness. So it's not just a little encrypted little coding here and there. It is actually straight in our faces. Okay. And again, the difference is that the book's reality is different in nature than the author's reality, right? So in terms of concept I'm speaking, I'm not using the word reality in reference as a subject, as God being subject to a reality. I'm not saying that at all, but your understanding is limited, so I have to use the words you use because that's a limited scope. But God's reality is not our reality. So when he puts something of his into our reality, it's going to be different. It's going to show characteristics that are similar, but they are totally different because it is a totally different reality. And you can see that graphically. You can see that graphically. Let me get that other. You see it graphically with this. You see it graphically here. That is not our space. That is not our universe. It is totally different. There's some aspects that are the same, right? But it is so drastically, in its very nature, different than the universe we see through our telescopes. So to that same degree is the difference between in the book that's going to be of that reality and the reality of God. It's going to be a very different thing. All right. So the answer depends on how much of the author's identity is embedded in the text. If the book's awareness is confined to its internal content, which it is, it might never know. And what it says is it might never know the actual
the actual state or the actual God. Might never know. Which also points out to the fact or reason why there is no proof or evidence. In other words, this is telling you that given the scenario I gave it, you'll never know. There's never a knowing that God is or not. Okay? So that is off the table, given the scenario. You can't come back with a stupid statement, oh, well, then I don't need to believe it. Because that's where your stupidity and ignorance shows itself in full glory. It's in full glory. Because there is enough for us to infer that there is a creator. There is enough. But you want to be in denial. You don't want to accept conceptual validity, which is an evidence according to science, and certain science you discard, especially when it gets into this space. So the atheist, that you're showing your epistemic bias, and you're showing your denial, because that's the only space you have, is denial. Okay, and let's finish off here with, if the author left traces, it could piece together a myth or truth about its creator. And what we know about the God in the Bible, that all he enough. And to provide ample proof that he does not exist. I mean, after all, what is the main proof that the atheist has that God doesn't exist? See, you understand? You see, I'm purposely doing this so that you can see what the problem is, if you would admit to it. And the problem is that you guys have circular reasoning. You are stuck within existence and reality. And you think that that's a thing. I've already discussed this. Given the scenario of the book, you have to, the concept, that's the concept. Is it valid? Yes. So if you were honest, intellectually honest, you would have to accept the conceptual validity that a God created the heavens and the earth just as much as an author writes a book and makes it self-aware in terms of human beings. And this is the problems that we see. And there would be no evidence or proof. That's it. And the Christian, the believer, see, here we have the atheist and believer together because they're both insisting that God has to exist. He doesn't have to be in the book. He doesn't have to be in the book. What do you have left? Conceptual validity, which in science is accepted as evidence. It's an evidence if it's conceptually valid. All right, so that's it. You have that. If you choose to believe or not, that's up to you. That is what God did. See, God's not creating a decision for you. He's created a dilemma for you. That is what God has done. Because instead of showing himself, he gave us a universe to look at, which is the opposite of him, but in his image, in likeness, because again, it's all encompassing, it's everywhere. It is where we came from, our origin, all of that. and he's provided ample doubt and the proof that he does not exist. It's the author put in proof that there is no author in this book. Where do you see? Now I'm saying this because you guys have seen it. There have been a few books and now even a few movies that has the author inside his movie and inside the book. You have seen it. Even now in the Marvel, not now, but the Marvel movies, the author has been an actor in the movie. Not a big role. He's just there reading a newspaper, but that's him. He's there. And you know what I'm talking about, the Marvel Comics guy. Have you ever seen, what was it called? The Blue Crayon? There's a movie, something Crayon, the Blue Crayon, is it? Where the character can create any reality using a crayon. So he needs a car, he creates the car, and then he's driving in the car, right? And this is also the fact that the author then places himself in the story. It's quite fascinating. You guys should go and see that. But this helps you to expand your thinking, to realizing, wait a minute, if the scenario is true, in fact, that the Bible, as it says in the beginning, God creates the heavens and the earth. And when the Bible says heavens and earth, it means reality and existence. Because it says, because we're taking it that, all things. And the dictionary says that reality are things that exist. And then reality, that says reality and existence are things that are real. They both agree in one thing. On thing. They're things. But then you go to the Bible again and you see many times it says God created all things. So what is the Bible teaching? Very clearly that he cannot be a thing himself. So therefore, the dictionary says reality pertains to things, and the dictionary says that existence pertains to things. That leaves who out? Okay, so that's it. As simple as that. It's not a hard thing. But many believers, many atheists who were formerly believers too, they are still stuck in denial and in a lack of ability to think abstractly. That's the question I wanted to ask next. Let's do that. Okay, let's ask a question. Is abstract thinking needed to comprehend the implications of the above discussion? Okay, so we're going to ask that question to the AI and see what it says. I'm just curious. I'm saying. Great question. You're really digging into the philosophy here. Let's break it down. What abstract things mean in this context? Abstract concepts are ideas that don't have a physical form but help us reason about reality. Things like consciousness, identity, causality, authorship, existence, and knowledge. In your scenario, a book becoming self-aware, the book's awareness isn't about ink and paper. It's about abstract notions like selfhood and origin. Why abstraction is necessary? Direct perception versus inference. A self-aware book can see the existence of text to the idea of an external author. Now this is a perception that I didn't want it to do. because it really has nothing to do with it, and I will make it think again about it in a moment. But why is this a bad answer, or it's within the scope? I understand why, because you gotta, with AI, you really have to eliminate all the dumb thinking, all the thinking that you don't want it to do. Because when I said inside the book, it considered the physical book. So inside the book you have physical words, but that's not what I wanted. I wanted it to just go by the story, but it's not the story's reading of its story, right? You understand? It is just simply a representation of the reality. So I'm going to make that correction for it, but we'll continue reading. Implications of creation. Understand, someone chose to write me, an identity, that someone is distinct from me. All of these are abstract. Limits of awareness. Without abstraction, the book would only know the literal words again inside it, and I'm sure it would only know its own reality, whatever its existence is that the words depict. Okay, I hope the core of the matter is not the words. When we go to the words, then we're going into an area we don't really need to go to. It can speculate about things beyond its pages, which is what the reality is. This is what we have to look at. Much like humans speculating about the universe's origin. And it does depict the human condition, the human situation, our own reality, to a T. Human parallel. We ourselves rely on abstraction to comprehend our own origins. Physics uses abstract models. This is science, folks. See, this is where the atheists, you're lost here, because science uses abstract thinking. It has to. It uses it in things like space-time, quantum fields, to explain simulation, fate, to grapple with creation. And then without abstraction, we'd only see the text of our world, and we'll take this allegorically or metaphorically, that the raw phenomena, but never. See, in these two groups, you have the science. Look at this. Don't deny it now. Physicists are here. The religious folks are here, and the philosophers. But who is here? Who is here? The raw phenomena. We don't need to ask who or why. Who is that? Those are the atheists. Yeah. Okay. So the answer for us could only describe what is, not really. So that is the take on AI on the need for abstraction. Now, not using the text, of books, but only what the text implies, existence, things, and so you guys understand that? So I'm helping the AI to focus in on what our scope is. It's not the text, because the book is not reading itself. The book doesn't read that text. The characters in the book are just living. We are seeing their life through the text. That's for us, for our ingestion, for our ingest. It's not for the books. So that's why I asked that question. Let it answer, and with that, we'll end it today. Okay. In terms of the reality implied by the stories inside, here's the distilled version. Characters and histories that exist now, happenings and characters would simply exist as their own world with no necessary link to an author. You're not reading that, I'm sorry. There it is. An inference of a creator. However, patterns, laws, or recurring structures in that world could reality. Limits of comprehension. Without abstraction, the world's inhabitants would only know their own existence. With abstract creator. So I ask you, why do we have abstract thinking? Why is abstract thinking necessary? Just let us go by what science discovers. And that's that. What is, and that's that. What isn't. Why do we have abstract thinking? Could that be the connection? Philosophical parallel. This mirrors how humans experience reality. We live within the story of the universe, and while we can perceive its laws and structures, we must use abstract reasoning to ask whether there is an author beyond it. Okay? So in short, the self-aware book its awareness would be that of that reality, and only through abstraction could it begin to wonder whether an external creator exists. Okay? Again, now, why is for humans, is it particular? Is it unique? Is it unique to humans? It's I'll let everyone above here. Oh yeah, you can see it now. Why abstraction is necessary? Let's see its answer to me. Abstraction is necessary for possibilities and create systems of knowledge. See that? Create systems of knowledge. Knowledge is science. Remember that. While some animals show rudimentary abstract thinking, humans uniquely developed it to a high degree. And evolution favored it because it enabled language, planning, tool making, and culture. So if we didn't have culture, tool making, planning abilities, language, what would we be? So here you go. We will be just like animals. We will be totally animalistic. Not human at all. So is this the difference? Is this the image of God in man? I'm not covering that topic today, but I'm just, you guys had to think. Hopefully we have thinkers here. Why abstraction is necessary? It simplifies complexity. Abstraction reduces overwhelming details into manageable concepts. A tree. Supports problem solving. It lets us identify patterns, generalize rules, and apply them to new situations. Okay, that's a great win, especially when you're looking at the evolutionary considerations for survival, right? Enables imagination and planning. Abstract thought allows us to picture scenarios that don't exist yet, crucial for anticipating danger, inventing tools, or designing societies. So this is quite about all possible scenarios. Before proceeding, we can forecast what will happen if we do this, or if we go here, or we do that. We can have forecasting. That makes us very intelligent and prepared for whatever happens, and you can actually see how it's totally advantageous to see into the future, not the actual future, because the actual future would, depend on what decision we made. But we can extrapolate into self and involving someone else's actions and sayings and doings. And I described it to a T. And exactly what I would say. I even described their movement as they reacted to something that was told to them. Exactly, because these things can be done. He's using abstract thought, right? It's because he knows the future. Why do we have abstract thought? Because we don't know the future. But God made us in the picture of the universe. You see one thing, the blackness, but that's not God. But if you see the opposite, you see that God is light. You see the unity and likeness of God as man. There are limitations. So our foretelling of the future are abstractions. But God is actual knowledge to time. Man is. But he gave us, that's our likeness to God in that image and likeness. Now, foundation of language and mathematics. Words and numbers are abstractions. Foundation of language and mathematics. Words and numbers are abstractions. Without them, communication and science wouldn't exist. The issue of God is an abstraction. You have to be able, in order to have a understanding of the thinking out of the box. So you have to be able to think with abstraction. That is a skill. It is, without abstraction, you are limited. You are a limited thinker. Even to the point that communication is a problem because you don't understand. And you say, oh, the Bible is nonsense. Oh, you're talking about a symptom of your condition. It's not a reality. It's a symptom of your condition, which is a lack of understanding of how use which is necessary for science. That's the ridiculousness of the atheist position. Is abstraction unique to... Okay? Our brains evolve and self-directed thought. Okay? So we have it as a default. Okay, so we have it as a default in ourselves, the image and likeness of God. Other animals show hints, primates, dolphins, and some birds can grasp general rules or symbols said about man. Let us rules or symbols said about man. Let us make man in our image and likeness. Now, in our image and likeness. He didn't say that about the apes. Know that God does use some of his image and likeness. And that's the whole idea behind the universe being an image and likeness of God. See, so there are elements that God does use in his creation. And then you have human uniqueness. What sets us apart, human uniqueness. What sets us apart to communicate abstract concepts through language, art, and culture, which builds upon itself, right? Which builds upon itself, right? We have as human beings. Operate socially. If anyone does evolution, there's no says very clearly seven periods ridiculous and dishonest. Okay, and then they tell you, well, the context is 24 hours, and then again the context is 24 hours, and then again the context is the... Okay, so this is the ridiculousness that these religious thinkers and theologians who are defending a religious concept, that's something different. And boy, I'm going to call the girls first. Are you depending on books? Your knowledge comes from books, what other people opined. See, now I'm using your own dumb words, because this is all dumb. But it's really ignorant to be standing on stuff that you were taught by men when about God, when if there is God for him for that. See, that's the difference. I learned from God. Okay, I learned. Somebody once. Okay. I learned. Somebody once asked me, I was teaching in a seminary. Knowledge, and I told them they ain't no knowledge, and I told them they ain't no. So listen. Again, you want religion, you got it. You want God and the truth, the ability to imagine a tool before creating it. You want God and the truth, the ability to imagine a tool before creating it required abstraction. Fossil evidence, and that's the required abstraction. Fossil evidence, and that's the creative process. God is a creator, right? Appeared earlier than once thought. Social cohesion. Abstract ideas like kinship, morality, and shared myths allowed humans to. And then cultural explosion. Around 200,000 years ago, abstraction fueled art, religion, and complex society. Again, and you have to look at my teachings on evolution to understand how this perfectly matches up with Genesis 1. It does, to a T. Okay, but it's not, we can't do it in this teaching now. We're finishing up, and in summary, and build systems of knowledge. It is largely importance lies in enabling language planning, tool making, and culture, and the very foundations of human civilization. So basically what evolution would, those who don't believe that there's a God, would have to explain how evolution selected man for the unique development of it. How did man become the unique developer of abstract thought? Given that the other animals would indicate that they had some degree of abstraction, but never developed it as to the degree that humans. Why not? Humans and animals have been around the same environments. I mean, did we come from another planet? 200,000 years ago, did evolution decide, make a decision? Let's go with the human model. Yeah, let's go. Okay? So, again, the things with evolution without a God involved is that, evolution would have developed the same amount of time. So the time for abstract, unique, the time for the level of abstract thought that humans have is the same for all the animals that are out there today. What caused this difference to occur? So that is, and it's unique, because if you have to look at natural occurrences, a natural basis. But if it's a natural basis, it can happen again. It should have happened with other animals, and it could have happened before man. Questions without answers. Take care. God bless you. One more lesson next week. I'm going to tell you right now, next week, we are going to have AI to finish off this AI series. Look at Torah. Look at the Bible and make a mathematical calculation as to the first things and the later things. And we're going to have it examine what difference is expected or should be had from Torahtic teachings to its practical exponential realization through time. So that's what's going to be very interesting next week, and we invite you all to check us out. Take care. Again, send your offerings to this on your phone. Click on it before I go bye-bye. And subscribe on YouTube, TSPCI. And I'll see you guys next week. Take care, and God bless you.